This is Jarrod Horak for the RunawayHorse.com, back with my final look at the 2022 Breeders' Cup. I recapped the Breeders' Cup Classic in my first video this week, and then I just did a recap of Breeders' Cup Friday, and now I'm going to do the rest of the Breeders' Cup Saturday races in this video. So if you're interested in my full card analysis from Del Mar, and those full cards will start on Friday, November 11th. Del Mar will run their Bing Crosby season through December 4th. And you can find all those full cards, if you're interested in those, on my sales page at therunawayhorse.com. You can purchase individual full cards, weekly and weekend packages, or the entire meet. Head on over to therunawayhorse.com, click on my sales page for more details. Now let's get into the recap for Breeders' Cup Saturday. Now before I get into the Breeders' Cup races on the program, the opening race was a 2-year-old maiden special weight race, 7 furlongs on the main track, and we had a very impressive winner and one that could end up on the Derby Trail, and that is Arabian Night for trainer Bob Baffert. This one is a son of Uncle Mo, and he just dominated this race. He got out to the front, and then he just kicked well clear in the stretch, and he won by more than 7 lengths. He was wrapped up under John Velasquez, and he just dominated this race. Like, he looks like a very promising prospect for trainer Bob Baffert heading into 2023, and you can expect that this horse is going to end up on the Kentucky Derby Trail. Determinedly was clearly second best. He was more than 6 lengths clear of the rest. Flavien Prat rode him for trainer Mark Casse, and he's another one. I don't think he's going to be a maiden much longer. This was a good effort behind a very good colt in Arabian Night, and Determinedly is one that you can probably watch and keep an eye on in the maiden ranks. I expect that he's going to break his maiden soon, and then Expect More was a clear third there. So now we're going to get into the Breeders' Cup races, and then we're going to start with the third race, and it was the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. And in this race, Goodnight Olive was your favorite for trainer Chad Brown, and she did not disappoint. In this race, it looked like there was a lot of pace. Goodnight Olive set a nice stalking trip. She was able to stalk, pounce, open up by 2 lengths in the stretch, and then win by 2.5 lengths as the favorite. Good effort under Irad Ortiz Jr. Echo Zulu from the far outside post, she stalked and she was able to run second. She ran better than I thought she would, considering the pace scenario and figuring that she was going to get a wide trip chasing those fast fractions. But she ran well. Good effort, better than I expected. Wicked Halo, the stablemate of Echo Zulu, out from an outer post as well, sat in mid-pack. I thought she could run well in this race, and she did. She was 14-1, and she ended up finishing a clear third. CC, your 2021 Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint winner, ended up finishing 4th. And Obligatory was my value top choice here because I thought the pace would heat up. I really like that exacted with Goodnight Olive and Obligatory, but Obligatory just got going too late, and she ended up finishing 5th. She was less than a length behind 4th. So that was the look at the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. The next race was the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. This one was the huge upset, and it was really caused because Golden Pal, your heavy favorite, was expected to go right to the front, and it looked like he would probably wire the field. He loved Keeneland, he was in good form, and he just looked like the best horse on paper, but that's why they run the races, because he did not get out of the gate. He broke slow, he broke last in the 14-horse field, and basically his chances were over. He was stalking the pace, and he never really got involved. He finished 10th. Now, because the pace scenario completely changed when the likely favorite and pace setter blew the break, Caravel got out to the front, and she was able to just keep going. That's exactly what happened. When Golden Pal blew the break, she was able to inherit the lead. She got out there, she controlled the pace, and she won by a half length, 42-1 odds. Tyler Gaffalione, Brad Cox. Emirati Anna from overseas, Ryan Moore rode. This one finished second at 21-1. Creative Force, another overseas runner, ended up finishing 3rd. And then Charles Appleby trained that 3rd place finisher. And as I said, the big disappointment was Golden Pal. Another one that I thought could do well in this race was Campanelle for trainer Wesley Ward. She was my value top choice under Frankie Dettori. She did not have a good trip at all. She was jostled, she was steadied, never really had a chance, and she ended up finishing 7th in that race at 8-1 odds. Disappointing effort, but that happens on these big days. You have these full fields, and some horses just don't work out the right trips, and that was the case with Campanelle and then Golden Pal as well. So now the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. Now in this race, my original top choice was Laurel River, but if you bought my full card analysis After Laurel River scratched, I changed my analysis. I sent out an updated analysis of the Breeders' Cup dirt mile there, and I made Cody's Wish my top choice because that one was my second primary contender. And then when Laurel River scratched, thought that there was going to be a very good chance that Cody's Wish was going to win. So he became my top choice in this race, and he did not disappoint. He rallied from last. He went last to first in this race. It's not easy to do because the 4 years prior to this Breeders' Cup, a dirt mile, the winners went wire to wire. But with Laurel River out of there, the quality speed just really wasn't there, and you figured horses from off the pace would do well. Now, Cyberknife was the second choice, and he ran a decent race, but you figure he really did lose this race from the post position standpoint, because originally he was going to be in post 9, and those outer posts, you just don't win 1 mile races at Keeneland from those outer posts. He was able to move in 2 positions because of the 2 scratches. So he moved in from post 9 to post 7, and he was able, but he still stalked wide. So that was the difference. Cody's Wish did go last to first, but he was able to save a lot of ground early, and then he was able to swing out in the backstretch, work his way up on the outside, and just run down Cyberknife. And Cyberknife never really was able to save any ground. He was stalking wide, he got the lead, but Cody's Wish had all the momentum, and he ended up winning by a head as the favorite. So I did have that exacta with Cody's Wish and Cyberknife. Slow down, Andy was third, and then it was Goodnight rounding out the top 4. Now the next Breeders' Cup race that we will talk about will be the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. Another European-dominated race here. It was Tuesday for trainer Ryan Moore and Aidan O'Brien, and this horse rallied from 7th place and just swung out in the stretch. In Italian was the pace setter, set a decent pace there for trainer Chad Brown. Joel Rosario rode in Italian, did everything but win, set a legitimate pace, opened up by 2.5 lengths in the stretch, but Tuesday just ran him down, just had a better kick and was able to win by a length. In Italian just did hold second by a half length over 32-1 long shot Lady Spikespear, and Nashua was my top choice here. Ended up finishing a clear 4th as the beaten favorite. I was just probably a bit too far back early. Tuesday with Ryan Moore just got a better trip than Nashua with Holly Doyle. So that was the difference there. The trip, Ryan Moore gave the Tuesday a great ride. In Italian did all of the pace work, and then Tuesday just ran her down. And then Moore ended up finishing 5th, rounding out that super high 5 under Frankie Dettori. So now in the next Breeders' Cup race for Breeders' Cup Saturday was the Breeders' Cup Sprint. And in this race, it looked like on paper that Jackie's Warrior was going to be the controlling speed and drew a perfect outside post. And even if he didn't get the lead, you figured he was going to press, get first run, and hold off the late runners. And Jackie's Warrior was my top choice because of those reasons, because of that outer draw, because of the perceived pace advantage, and it just didn't work out, even though it did get a good trip. Not really surprised at the pace scenario with Super Ocho setting the pace here, and that one was a hopeless long shot. You kind of knew that he wasn't going to end up coming in. He was 41-1, but you knew he could be there early. But Jackie's Warrior just sat off of that one. Super Ocho got tired. It should have been at that point that Jackie's Warrior should have been able to take over, but really was never able to get clear and ended up swinging way wide. Super Ocho went outside. Jackie's Warrior was wide in the stretch, and Elite Power for trainer Bill Mott, this one was my second choice, was able to get the job done at 5-1. I was really hoping for that exacta with Elite Power and Jackie's Warrior, but Jackie's Warrior could not hold second. CZ Rocket was able to stalk the pace, take the lead, and then outfinish Jackie's Warrior by a half length for second. Then Manny Wah ended up completing the Superfecta, and then Obesos was behind that one. So a disappointing end of the career for Jackie's Warrior, a very good sprinter, but take nothing away from the winner here, Elite Power. It'll be interesting to see the sprint championship, because Cody's Wish is one that likes to run well up to a mile. Elite Power was running in these sprint races, and now he's won the sprint, and then Cody's Wish has won the dirt mile, and maybe we have the Cigar Mile later this year. If a horse like Cody's Wish wins that one, he certainly has done enough to be considered the sprint champion. But Elite Power definitely on the improve for trainer Bill Mott. Irad Ortiz Jr. rode that one to victory. And then in the next race, it was the Breeders' Cup Mile, dominated by overseas runners. This one was my best bet top choice, and it was Modern Games. I picked him in the Breeders' Cup last year. They had that snafu at the gate. They made him run for purse money only, and he won that one. I loved him in the Woodbine Mile earlier this year. He dominated that one. And then coming right back here, I just thought that he was too classy for these, and that was the case. He didn't have a great start. He was able to rally wide. He was just classier than this group, and he was able to win under William Buick. Nice effort, Modern Games. Certainly a top-notch mile turf runner for trainer Charles Appleby. Sherrill Spite, 55-1, got up for second by a nose over Kinross. And you see this in these Breeders' Cup races. It makes these exactas, trifectas, especially trifectas and superfectas and super high fives, so tough to hit because you have these hopeless long shots in here. Not that they were really hopeless. They all have talent, but you have these 14-horse fields, and it's tough to whittle them down. And a horse like Sherrill Spite is one, based on recent form, that you think you can confidently throw out, and then they just jump up and run a big race in a race like the Turf Mile. And Kinross was third under Frankie Dettori. Ivar was fourth, and Malathaat rounded out the top five there. So now we will go to the next Breeders' Cup race on the Breeders' Cup Saturday program, and it was the Breeders' Cup Distaff. This was an interesting race, even how it was run. Now, Society got to the front, and that was expected. You expected her to go out to the front. Search Results chased from second. Expected that as well. Now, Blue Stripe was a live long shot. Did use her underneath in some tickets, and she was able to sit third in the early going and then drop back, and then she was able to rally again. But the premature move was made by Secret Oath first, and she's done this multiple times this year, where she makes that wide early move and then she can't sustain that run. She did it again in this spot. She was able to make a move prematurely, take the lead, and it was interesting to see Nest follow her, and they both just made premature wide moves, especially Nest. Nest was the favorite. There was no reason to go after Secret Oath. They should have known that Secret Oath likes to make those early moves and then not sustain the run, but they pulled the trigger. She moved too soon. She was racing wide, and then she ended up finishing an even fourth there. Her stablemate, Malathaat, saved ground from the inside post, was able to rally out, work her way outside, and in the very last jump, this one got up, and I was happy about that because it helped me hit the pick 4 and pick 5. Definitely needed her. Did not have Blue Stripe in those wagers, and Blue Stripe just missed by a nose, and then Clairiere was right there, a nose back. So those three separated by a nose. Malathaat got up on the outside in the last possible jump to just win over Blue Stripe and Clairiere. And then Nest was a clear fourth behind those two. So now we will move on to the next Breeders' Cup race, and it will be the Breeders' Cup Turf. And this will be the last one I'll talk about in this video because I did a classic recap before, and you can watch that classic video on my YouTube channel. But in this race, my second choice in here was Rebel's Romance, and ended up getting the job done. Again, Charles Appleby, James Doyle rode this one. Stone Age, Ryan Moore, Aidan O'Brien was second. Warlike Goddess was third. And then Mishriff was my value top choice. He ended up finishing fourth. He actually went off lower than Rebel's Romance. Wasn't expecting that. Rebel's Romance was 3-1 morning line. Wasn't expecting him to go off almost 6-1. But that's what happens on these big days. You have these big full fields, and sometimes when you don't have a standout favorite, some other horses surprisingly take money. And that was Nation's Pride. That one ended up being the favorite for Charles Appleby. But his sharp Overseas Shipper ended up winning this one. And Overseas Shippers typically win the Breeders' Cup Turf. So in this race, Rebel's Romance went from 10th to win easily by more than 2 lengths. Stone Age stalked the pace, just did hold off Warlike Goddess for the runner-up spot. So if they could have swapped spots, I think I would have had to pick 5 in this race if Warlike Goddess would have been able to run second. But that wasn't the case here. Wasn't quite able to get that one done. But I did have the winner here, and it did lead me to my top choice, Flightline, winning the Classic, and I was able to have the pick 4 and the pick 5 there. So now I'll throw the highlights for Breeders' Cup Saturday there. As I mentioned in my other video, I had the pick 4 on Breeders' Cup Friday, and I'll do the Breeders' Cup Saturday highlights now, put them up on the screen. And I did have Arabian Night in that first race was my top choice. I had 4 top choice winners, also had Cody's Wish, Modern Games, and Flightline. I think I had 6 daily doubles, 7 pick 3s on the day. So I was able to have the winner in the Dirt Mile and the Mile and the Classic. Of course, Flightline, a lot of people probably had that one. Had that late pick 5, that pick 4 as well. And that late pick 5 for $2 paid $1,400. And then I also had the ending in the 12th race. They had one more race after the Classic. had that double in pick 3 as well. And then the special $2 daily double for the 2-day Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, Breeders' Cup Turf had that double as well. That $2 double paid $75 and change. So overall, pretty good day for my full card on Breeders' Cup Saturday, especially because of that pick 5. And then with that pick 4 on Friday, and then the pick 4 on Saturday as well. I did well with those kind of wagers and doubles and pick 3s, as I mentioned on that Breeders' Cup Saturday program, but just couldn't really connect with my trifectas and superfectas. That was disappointing. But overall, solid Breeders' Cup. You know that these things are tough every year, and I was able to show a profit with my own personal wagers on both days because of that Friday pick 4 and that Saturday pick 5. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment if you like this content. And that will wrap up my look at the 2022 Breeders' Cup. I'll be doing some handicapping videos coming up. Stay tuned to my channel. Each week that they have Kentucky Derby and Oaks points races, I have the video series, my Kentucky Oaks video series, where I'm going to cover all the points races, and then the Kentucky Derby video series, where I'm going to cover all the Kentucky Derby points races for the rest of this year, and then into 2023 for the 2023 Triple Crown Series. So stay tuned to all that. And until I see you next time, good luck at the races.